Hi guys, Bob here, and in this video we're going to be looking at how to do this kind of dramatic lightning effect watercolor across the sea. It's a full process, so we get right into it and we start with the paper size. So I decided to do my own paper size here, which was about 20 centimeters by 15 centimeters, and we're using a hot pressed canvas paper. Now there's a thing called the rule of thirds, and what it is basically, if you look at any famous painting, you'll see that there's a certain composition to it. And the rule of thirds is one of these easy ones. It's the same if you're doing a YouTube video, you would want to be doing where you are a third, your eyes are at a third of the screen because it's the most pleasing to the eye, something like that. It's to do with viewer psychology. So this process, I tried to use pretty much the same brush all the way through, and later on, it wasn't until really I got to the end I decided, okay, I want to add in details, and we will get to that once we're there. But this is a long video. It is speeded up to 3 times the speed, so what you are looking at did take approximately an hour and a half, probably 2 hours, I think, if I'm being honest. And that included all the details at the end, but ultimately we're just laying down a wash, and we used the wet tool at the top left to just wet the bottom third layer. And now we're using the kind of bone black and cadmium orange to get this effect in the bottom. What I would say is that the pigmentation button was used here, so you only get that in the Pro version. But what I've been finding recently, and I've been doing a lot of experimenting, is that when I use the blowing tool, I'm getting much better results from my watercolor. It seems more natural. But we're just trying different things, the kind of dark cobalt blue coming in here to get a kind of sea looking colour. And I was using the reference which I'll put up on the screen. This came from Pexels, and I'll also try to put the photographer who took this on the screen. So now I'm kind of happy with my sea colours to begin with, and this is a process, a gradual process, but to try and contain it to the top half of the paper, I've used a selection tool to keep everything where I want it to stay. Again, using kind of the cadmium orange and the cobalt blue to start getting the colours together. And again, looking at my reference to see where the dark parts of the drawing is going to be and where the light parts are going to be. All the time we're pretty much using this flat brush, which is in the watercolor brush set, and you can default it, and then all I'm really going to be doing is changing the settings. And I love the kind of being able to blow the water around. It's really great. Yeah, it gives all these beautiful effects that we can get. At this point I was trying to get the bottom of the cloud, and kind of struggled a wee bit. I probably could have done with using a different brush, but I was really trying to maintain not moving on to other brushes, which it was just a wee kind of challenge I was setting myself rather than jumping between loads of different brushes, which sometimes I do to try and get the effects. And I would encourage you to do that, encourage you to try all the brushes, but some of them I have created myself, and that could be confusing to any beginners out there that are just getting started. I don't want to be using brushes that you don't have in your default set. But we do have to go on to talking about brush creation, because it does make quite a big difference to the results that you get. You can see again just flipping and then adding water, more water, less water, depending on what you're trying to get. But while you're doing a wash, you definitely want a high percentage of water. You want to have wet the layer which I've shown you in the previous videos that I've done. Now, at this point I wanted to put in an island that's in the original reference, and I was trying a few wee things with selections, seeing if I could get kind of tree shapes, and then try and limit my watercolor to that island area, just as just an experiment to see if it was a good method. But it actually worked out pretty good. There's still some tweaking I had to do after I removed the selection, but overall it worked quite well as a methodology. You can see you get the kind of bloom happening there, and I had to hit Control Z a few times so just to bring myself back. And that's a great thing about digital art, it's a great thing about Rebelle, is you can bring yourself back to before the watercolour started to spread out just by hitting Control and Z. So I was waiting to see, I moved the diffusion speed down in the visual settings just to give myself more of a time to see what results we were going to get. And I was trying to get the light was hitting the right hand side of the island and the left hand side was dark. So that's why when I'm using the blowing brush or the blowing tool, I'm pushing the dark to one side and the light to the other. But at this point I had kind of had enough. It gave me an underlying texture which I could use, and I was just trying to kind of resolve some of the areas that didn't look quite right. And it wasn't the best, but like I says, sometimes you find the mistakes that are below your painting sometimes make the finished product look all the better. And you find that with oil painting as well. When you do an underpainting, some of those ridges, some of the stuff comes together and looks pretty good. I don't know if you can hear my phone's going off at the moment. Trying to see what this is all about. So just my children checking in to tell me they're still alive, which is always a good thing. But we're doing a reflection here, the reflection in the sea, trying to add some of the detail to the trees on the island, which again with the watercolour you get lovely effects. And if you want to, I would suggest you slow down the diffusion speed, get in there with that little blowing tool, and you can get some really lovely looking details that you don't intend. And that's sometimes the difficulty with digital art is, and it's certainly a struggle that I've had over the years, is digital art is too digitally. You don't get those textures, and you're obviously using a pen that's, in my case, the tilt doesn't quite work on my Huion. I've tried to get that fixed for years and eventually gave up. But you get tilt and that. But in the real world, you can do a lot more little things with your brush flicking, and you've got a lot more control in the real world in some ways. But that also gives it less control. So when you're using water in the real world, you've got less control, but some ways that's a slightly different way of doing painting. I was really pleased when Rebelle come along, because Rebelle gives me that ability to get things I haven't drawn. It gives me the ability to let the program come up with its own little nuances to the painting, whereas in real life when you're doing watercolour, the water's taking over, the water's doing some cool stuff. A sponge or salt or many of the other methods that you can use in the real world that don't transition into digital world make sometimes your pictures, or will make your paintings, that much more dynamic. Rebelle brings some of that into our work, and that's why I love the blowing tool. I wish we could have some options in the blowing tool. I don't like the fact that it's round all the time. I don't know if you can actually change the shape. I don't think you can. It always seems to be round. But you can see I'm using it here for this cloud, trying to get this darker area over on this left hand side, and I'm trying to spread the darkness up the way into that lighter blue. Sometimes I'll hit the F key, and I talked about that in the past, hitting the F key to fast dry the water, but your layer remains wet, so when you add more water back onto the page it'll start to work. But you can see how you can achieve maybe even some of the cool things in your drawings and your paintings in Rebelle. You might be trying to achieve these wavy kind of textures. And that's why I wanted to kind of do the kind of longer videos, was just to try and show some of the in-between bits, because sometimes the in-between bits teach things that people are trying to achieve that perhaps I'm not trying to achieve, but somebody goes, oh, I was looking to kind of get that effect, and hopefully it helps you. So here in Scotland, it's a kind of miserable day. It was nice and sunny yesterday. I was out in the garden yesterday doing some path clearing, which was fun. A wee bit sore today because usually sitting in my bottom doing artwork. At this point in the painting, I am trying to do like a cloud. I was trying to do a selection for this area to try and, again, limit where the water is going to go. It can wet the layer and it only wets inside the selection. But I really wanted to try and get in here with the blowing tool and keep it confined to get some cool shapes without it affecting those cool shapes that I've done in the dark blue and the dark grey over to the right and the left of the painting. Because of the hard edge that creates, I then went round and added water to the edge of it, and it then is affecting this area, but it was to try and soften those edges. You could use the blending tool to do that, but I've showed you that in a previous video using the blending tool. But in this case, I just wanted to try and get the blowing tool doing most of the work. So yeah, a wee bit kind of sore today from working in the garden, and I've got another day off tomorrow and then back to work as per normal. But happy it's the weekend at the moment. Hopefully when you're watching this it's still the weekend, or you're not working and you don't have the sadness of, well, I enjoy my work. I'm sure most people don't mind their work, but yeah, you know what I mean. Work's work. I'd love to do this full time, but hey, that's just not practical at this moment in time. I really liked the dynamicness of this photograph, this lightning. You can actually see it dulled in the reflection that you'll get to see a wee bit later. And I'm not sure I quite captured that, but I certainly tried. By this point, we're trying to add in the lightning, and I thought I'll try using the kind of fountain pen. But you need to remember the fountain pen comes with water, and you need to, if you want to restrict that water, you need to turn the water right down so that you get a nice solid line. I was just trying different things here, from popping whiteness on to try and capture the sun hitting or the lightning hitting that side of this cloud that I can see in my reference, which I actually quite struggled with it, and tried different things just to see if I could get somewhere without going down my normal digital route. Now, I've been doing digital art for many years, so I know how to sort all these problems, but I know how to solve them using digital methods. And often what I'm trying to do is keep to one specific set of rules, and in this case using watercolor. But it doesn't always work, and if all you want to do is create cool art, use every tool in the box that you possibly can. But I don't like doing that for tutorials because it can overwhelm people. Oh, I need to use this tool now, I need to use this tool. And from experience, you get to learn what tools do what, and you get an idea of what effect you can get from specific brush types, specific water amounts, or some of the more, I did do a video on the cool brush effects that you can get with the markers in Rebelle. If you want to check that, I'll leave a link to that video at the end. But these are all tools that we can then utilise later on, including all the filters, which I use again later in this process. But I wanted to get the lightning giving this bloom effect, and I'm trying to do a bit of the reflection here. But the lightning was whenever you're trying to do a glow, you'll tend to find that the glow has a very light internal part, a very bright white, or it's usually bright white, and then a gradual increase in saturation from, like if it's a red lightsaber for example, it'll go really light red, light pink out to a solid red, and then you want that contrasting black background if you're trying to do, for example, a Jedi or something like that. So in this case I'm using the fountain pen with no water, which gives me these nice solid lines, and I then can change the size down the way using the brackets. I'm going to try and do the least amount of editing in this video, so I'm just literally, I've recorded this and I'm watching it back at 3 times the speed. I'm just talking over it, so apologies if there's gaps in the talk or I miss a bit. But either that or I don't put out videos because it takes me all day to edit them and them all together. So I'm adding details again, just trying to add some light reflecting off the foliage on the island. Again, I'm not really getting much of the detail at this point. And this was something I realised later on when I was kind of getting to the end of my drawing, is something I struggle with is detail without going down the digital route. And I guess it's no different from traditional, because normal watercolour you do your wash and then you'll get out your specialist digital pen, not your digital pen, but you'll get your specialist inking pen out, something that really brings the sharp detail into your painting. And it's not real different in digital art. You bring out these tools at the end to define the details. So again, I just was thinking I wanted the sea to look a bit more dynamic, and so again, just the technique of using this blowing tool has been a bit of a game changer recently for me with almost everything. So if there's some secret tool that you think could make all the difference, for me it's the blowing tool. It's really bringing the watercolor effect that I've been trying to achieve for many years. Watching a lot of traditional watercolor tutorials, I see them do certain things with particular objects, and I'm going to do a video on that in the future. And but ultimately I'm going to be telling you how to use the blowing tool, so definitely get in there, try it yourself, because it's going to make a big difference to everything that you do. And it matters when, well, I'll leave that for another video. So in that case, there will be affiliate links in the description. I know that there was a sale recently with Escape Motions. I don't know if it's still on at this moment in time. They did have 30% off. If you do use the affiliate link in the description, I get a wee commission. It helps me afford different bits and bobs. It's not a lot of money you get for it, but hey, every little bit helps to go towards microphones and the various bits and bobs I use to make these videos. Helps me pay for my PC. So again, here just trying to add detail, add some texture into the drawing using the blending tool. And I tried to avoid using the blending tool, but then the traditional tutorial I was watching prior to doing this video, the gentleman pulled out a tissue and then started to blend the hard edges with this tissue. And I thought, well, that's kind of what I'm doing with the blending brush. It's not real different. It's just he's using a bit of tissue and I'm using the blending brush. I've always felt the blending brush felt a wee bit like cheating, and it's not. You've really got to use every tool that you can possibly use. But the washes really come from high water and using the blowing tool to get lovely looking textures. So values, I've spoke about values in my videos many times. I've got specific videos on values. When I did my dragon series, we went through values. I've got one in colour. So definitely check out those videos as well. But ultimately here, I'm trying to increase the darkness value of, or decrease the value, depends how you look at it, of the island. Try and make it pop out into our faces. Again, doing reflections in the water. I did end up with a little kind of sun on the horizon beside the green to the right, just above where the cursor is at the moment. And I wanted to capture that sunshine might be making some reflections on the sea, as well as trying to capture the reflection of the lightning. One thing you want to make sure is that your horizon line is nice and solid. And again, here is a point where I thought, okay, let's try a technique of drawing a straight line and see if it kind of gives me the dynamic that I'm looking for. And I felt that it did, and I felt I can manipulate this a wee bit to make it look like land or something in the distance that you might not be quite sure what it is. And the mind helps fill in the blanks quite a lot. So just shaping it there with the blending brush again. Again, the blending brush came in handy at this point. This is when I started to use it to bring texture. Again, just to add a bit of detail, I added in some birds flying over the island. Also felt we needed something else to balance the island out, and over on the right I decided to draw a wee boat and a girl on this wee boat travelling towards the island. And that was just to kind of balance things out and give the image a bit of a story. There's nothing in the original reference for that. It was just basically from imagination, just to come up with things that you think might make your piece cool. So this technique I'm showing you here is where you use high water to bloom out a white spot on the paper, and it helps to lighten those colours around it to give your sunshine, for example, that burst of sun rays. So that might be a technique you want to try and apply. So here I'm using the filters. I was feeling the colours on my original weren't really what I was looking for, and I felt I'm going to go in and try the different filter types that we can get. And I've just left the full process in here for you to see, because I thought maybe you're looking for a particular way of achieving a certain look, and although I might not have used it, I've then used something else to make the colours I want for my image. So again, I just reversed that there. Again, just looking at duplicating layers, and I've kept, I like that, so I'll just keep it as a separate layer and turn it off so that I can go back to it if I want to. You'll see me start to use layers. You can double layers up and then merge them. Again, this is a technique I used during this to bring some bold colours to the overall image. So when we're looking at reflections, we need to remember that the colours that are going to be reflected are going to be the colours in the sky. You can't just make up a colour. Well, you can if you're going for kind of abstract art, but I was trying to look at my reference where the colours are reflected in the sea. Again, at this point, just trying to add detail as though you can tell which way the boat is going. So you're seeing the trail, can't remember what it's called, the trail behind the boat. When water hits the front of a boat, you would normally see some small reflections because they are breaking the bow and the waves are being created, and the sunlight would catch some of those waves. Further in the distance you are, the smaller your lines should be, and they should get bigger as the closer they get to your point of view. So if you imagine we're standing looking at this sunset, the reflections in the sea should be the smallest further away. Similar to here, I'm showing trying to show kind of wet rock by putting some little tiny kind of reflections, and they would be small. They wouldn't be big broad strokes because that wouldn't look quite right based on the distance from your viewpoint. So this is when we're getting to the detail. The overall picture's kind of at a point where I'm pretty happy. I've captured some nice colours, I've captured some nice washes, I'm just adding in detail, trying different things. This is where I start really diving into the digital art process. How can I get those little details in without ruining my picture? And the watercolor is great, but it can get a wee bit out of control, and this is where I'm like, okay, let's go for the pencils, let's go for the airbrush, let's go for the markers to try and help us achieve some of the detail. Now, I never really quite caught the cloud, and I thought I'll try and use the airbrush to get the cloud look. and see what happens, and you'll see what happens over this period here. But we capture a certain look, we capture a certain object, and again, might be useful. Clouds can be intensely detailed, because they are such dynamic things. It's not like a mug you're trying to draw. Clouds they're so different. Every one of them's different, and they've all got different shapes and shading. And you can get it, but it's just when you're trying to get a specific look, it can sometimes be a struggle, and especially if you're using the one brush. Now, I've made a few brushes which help with clouds. I think in 2 videos ago, I put a link to that brush. So go check out that video. You'll see the cloud brush. You should be able to download it and put it into your collection. So I know we've got a bit of a synthwave kind of vibe to the background here. I'm a big Stranger Things fan, if you don't already know. Looking forward to whenever the new season's going to come out. I'm sitting here actually with my baseball cap on, my thinking cap, as Dustin wears in the show. I am going to be going to collect my daughter soon, and then we're hoping to have Chinese tonight. It is Saturday night, and we might watch a movie. We'll see. Maybe make some popcorn. One thing I do find with the pigment brush, or with this pigment icon, which is part of the Pro version, it does give you a nicer colour mix, but the colour mix can be... It sometimes comes up with strange colours, like a red. You may have seen it right at the beginning when 2 of the colours started kind of mixing. It was almost like a red shade, and I found that sometimes the Pro version of this colour mix is great, and it really gives you lovely colour mixing, and sometimes without it, things look dull and a wee bit lifeless. Never quite understood that, to be honest, because, well, I do, because in digital art we always tend to find that things go to grey when you mix them. When you mix certain colours like blue and yellow, they will go towards a grey colour rather than a nice vibrant green, which you would get from using the pigment in the Pro version. Here, this is where I'm using some of these marker tools where you've got dodge burn. You can see I've made a custom burn too with a different shape, and we can add in a wee bit of texture using that, but you need to be careful, because that could be the texture's too repetitive and it makes your image look digital. Again, just outlining clouds, or in this case it could be the lightning I'm outlining, but you can see how you can get that. If you look at a cloud, you'll notice that it has this lovely detail when the sun's behind it, where it's outlined with a very thin detail. Some of these marker tools are really quite incredible, especially the overlay tool. It's one of the ones I really love. You can choose a colour you want to overlay with, and it kind of keeps all the detail that you've already drawn, but it gives you the colour that you're looking for, and it can really help you. Like over to the left, we've got some of this green coming in. Do I want green? Maybe not. So I can use the overlay to change that to a different type of colour. There is another tool there as well that you can use, but so I'm trying to get the reflection, and trying to get the reflection of a lightning bolt, which is actually pretty difficult. A boat's easy, but a lightning bolt not so much. So in a wee minute you'll notice that I will use a selection tool, and I'll use the selection tool to come in and select the lightning bolt to try and reflect it back on to the surface. And like I said, this is where we're getting into the digital tools. So here's one of the new version tools, which is the smudge and the liquefy. Again, I was just trying different things. I've got these different shapes that I've created, and I'll get on to another video to show you how you do that. But you can see how it can give you, using a window shape, you can potentially produce a forest type effect or something a wee bit more sci-fi. This looks like almost like a knuckle duster. Again, I was just playing around with shapes. Each of them gives you a slightly different and more unique aspect to using these tools. You can see how I can use it to smudge out lightning bolts, which helps them fade away as well. Whereas when you're using the fountain pen, that doesn't work quite the same. Again, just smudging some of the cloud together, you can actually start to see much more of a cloud shape, and I did notice this, and I did start to play around with that. This is the cloud brush that I created, that cloud shape, which I started using here at the end, just to get some of those more detailed clouds. Again, I was just trying to move away from anything that looked artificial and tried to make things look a bit more natural. I would probably say the spikes and the trees are looking a wee bit too kind of sci-fi, and they do have an effect on the area of colour above them, which again gives them a bit of a sci-fi kind of look. But this is it. This is where you get to the point in the drawing, you're like, oh, I've got all the colours I wanted, from a wash right through to this point where I can pretty much make up a story. I can talk about visiting the island. If you've ever watched YouTube, you might see a guy called Rocket. He does this really cool channel on going to abandoned islands and fishing and staying overnight. I love it. It's one of my favourites. I've not watched it in a while, to be fair, but when I did start finding his videos, I watched them. I kind of binge watched them, probably sickened myself a wee bit. But you can see here I'm trying to do a selection around the lightning bolt, not doing the best job of it because I was trying to kind of push things along, trying to get this video out today, and then hit the rotate button by accident. I was trying to basically flip the selection, make a new layer, flip the selection over, and then put it on to the sea. Again, just because it's so difficult to mimic without taking lots of time to do so. And it's not exactly right, and I didn't want it to be exactly right because a reflection, especially in water, is usually distorted. And so I then was trying to find out how can I make this lightning bolt bright, and then try to merge it into the drawing. I was trying lots of different things, including levels, which none of these really gave me the effect I was looking for. And I was actually about to give up on this, and then I think I eventually got to a point where I was like, oh, that's all I do. I just want to like put this underlying, turn down the opacity of the layer, and then I can integrate that into my drawing by merging the layers together. Add a bit of detail, and then I do have a reflection of what is kind of in the sky. Like I said, you can spend loads and loads of time on this if you want. I spent about an hour and a half overall on this painting. So I'm using the liquify tools here again, just to, because they're available, you may as well give them a shot and see how you got on with them. Sometimes they might just give you a kind of too much of a digital look, which I think some of this ended up with. The look was just a wee bit too much. Almost looks like a beach there, so I think I tried to merge some of this together. Also realised that the colours didn't match in the sea compared to the sky, so this is where you can use the colour brush and the overlay brush, dodge brush I guess in this case, to lighten. But again, I'll leave a link to that video at the end of this. Felt the shadow in the sea needed to be kind of larger. And again, we go in there with smudge, we liquefy. Liquefy, it all sounds like I'm saying liquefy. Again, just using that window shape to pull and push and give me some ripples across the sea. Pexels is a great resource if you don't have your own images. Pexels is free, copyright free, so loads of photographers, amazing people who have done photography. This is me just kind of comparing where I've been, where I've got to with this drawing. But Pexels is a great resource if you're wanting to find things that you can draw and there's no copyright on the image. So for example, this one that I've used, there's no copyright, but I thank the photographer for providing it. And if I remember, I'll put a link in the description to their profile so that you can try this yourself. Again, here, this is where I felt my island needed to be darker, but then whenever I tried stuff, I was like, I'm losing all that detail. So you can take things too far. Sometimes you're better off just saying, right, I've done enough, step away, go get a cup of tea, don't worry about it. Enjoy the sunshine, head outside, or enjoy the rain if you're in Scotland. Go make a beef sandwich. I don't know, anything. Just stop trying stuff. And I'm kind of shouting at the screen here at myself to say, stop trying stuff. It looks good as it is. So there we're at the end, guys. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you're all well. Check out the description for various other things. Cheers, and Wee Bob is out.